that's what I was taking to New York and was going to do a lot of the same things up there. So it reached the point where I all of a sudden didn't see myself having any future at WCW before they called me in and wanted me to maybe now to sign some kind of contract. Uh, the timing just seemed perfect with this other call and the way I was treated. And I thought, not that I was looking forward to move to Connecticut, but they paid to move me up there, and I thought that was going to be my last stop.
Were you surprised when you got the call from them and were recruited by Vince?
Yeah, I hadn't really expected it. Tully was the one that called me.
Yeah.
And told me that, my name had been mentioned, and Terry Garvin had thrown it out, and he thought they needed some help, and if I was interested, it'd be worth my time to call him again. And I always had a special spot for Tully. I went through my second marriage. I went through a bad divorce, and Tully was a friend to me at a time when he didn't need to be, and I stayed with him. And those are the things that you don't forget.
Was it ever brought up for you to work as talent in WWF?
No, and I don't know that it was never talked about, and I think Vince had a vision of office people, and their operation was so much more complex that was a full-time job. That you really couldn't do justice to both, and that's why now I'm surprised that Jim Ross has lasted as long as he has, because I don't know that I could do what Jim Ross is doing. The preparation that goes into being an announcer, and for the amount of shows and the amount of time that he has to do. He does the booking, which I did, and Vince approves everything, of course, but does the work of the booking and doing the preliminary payoffs. And I think Jim performs all these functions. And then now with the internet, he's got a thing on there that he contributes to on top of everything else. And the amount of TV that they're doing is more than what we were doing. And Jim with his Bell's palsy, which I think is a stress-related situation anyway, indicates that he's had more than his share of stress over his life. And besides, Vince fired him twice. And this last time back, Jim's just done an outstanding job there. If anything ever happened to Jim, I don't know who that they would get to replace him. I don't know if there's any one person that could do what he does, and they might have trouble finding a couple people to replace him.
Okay, what was your initial responsibilities when you went to WWF?
Oh, I was kind of brought in slow, and I think it was because I came from the NWA, WCW, because I remember Vince telling me one time that there was some resistance, to me being, why do we need him here? Because there was a lot of competition in the business. That there was the New York mentality, and the other was a separate product. And even though some talent had gone back and forth, and the one that he mentioned was Andre the Giant of all people. And I always had a lot of time for Andre. He would come into the territories because I had the big van. A lot of times I would haul him around, and I just enjoyed being around him because I thought he was one of the great figures in the history of the business. And I never stopped being a fan, so I like being around Andre. And Vince said to me one day, Andre said to him, "Boss, why you hired him? What would we do?" And Vince said, "Hey, don't worry, you'll see. He's going to help us." And Vince said to me, he says, "I'm not saying that to make you hurt your feelings, or certainly not to cause any problem with Andre, but he said, I just want you to be aware that there may be some people that feel that way." So he said, I don't want to push you into a media position where you're high profile doing this or that, where there might be some resistance to your being here, and let some people kind of just get accustomed to it."
And now you worked very extensively in the creative end with Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson. Well, can you tell us about that?
It was a tremendous learning experience for me. I have never stopped being a student of the business. From the time when I started working with the Funks, and then when I went to Florida, and especially being around Eddie Graham, I was like a sponge, wanting to just draw from him all the time, like just to sit and listen to him. And every place I've ever gone, because if you go to Germany, it's a different time, it's a different culture, it's a different approach. That's a learning experience. If you go to Japan, it was a different culture, a different presentation of business. You didn't have the importance of promos and creating personal issues. It was done in an altogether different way, and they respected the Japanese people effort. Somebody you can if you're trying to get beat down, they'll respect you because you get back up and do it again, and that's how you get over there. So everywhere I've ever gone, everything I've ever done, everything I've ever been around, to me has been a learning experience of wanting to grow in the business. And so I kind of looked at going to New York with Vince as being my graduate school. And a lot of things that I learned a lot of good things, and I learned a lot of things that I thought weren't so good, that I didn't agree with. But Vince had an approach, and I learned a lot about television, the flow of a program, and don't put somebody with this kind of look with somebody with the same style that comes in right behind them. Separate them. Don't put two tags back to back. If the manager's managing two guys, put them in different spots of the show, and certain parts of the show are meant. If something of impact was going to happen here, put something of less importance here, so the announcers can say, "Wow, did you?" and reflect back and add increased importance to what happened up here without sacrificing something. Not that this wasn't important, but it had a role. And a lot of times his house shows, I came from the NWA, WCW, where it started with the first match and the show crescendoed past the intermission up to the final main event. The WWF had a different approach, and I could see the merit of theirs. They would put a good action-packed match to start with, and then the main event matches would be sprinkled throughout, and they may give you the main event right after intermission, and then give you a feel-good send-home match or something with a lot of action. There was a thought process that went into it that, to me, was again part of my learning experience.
Well, what was Vince like to work with?
He's a fascinating individual. He's driven. He has no life. Like I say, I'm 60 years old. At this stage of my life, I feel blessed for what I have, which isn't very much other than a family that I love and young children that I love that are my eyes and they're my future. And Vince has all the success in $1 million. And Vince used to say, when he would talk to talent, I give you a magic wand, and if you wave your magic wand, and he would use that as a means of picking somebody's mind to find out what they wanted, what their goals were, what their dreams were, their aspirations were. And if I had a magic wand and could trade places with Vince McMahon, right now, today, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't want his life. I don't think he has a life. He's had a beautiful house in Greenwich, but I would rather live in a home than live in a palatial house. Again, it's my personal thing. Vince didn't believe he lived, he slept the business. He had no other life, no other interests. To me, vacations and downtime were important because no matter how hard you push yourself, there's a time when it's healthy, both mentally, physically, intellectually, every way, to kind of be able to separate yourself for a period of time and kind of recharge. And then when you come back, what you do, what you create, your performance, everything is better for that. Some people need it more or less than others. Vince, it's like he resented people that took vacations. It's like he would come back and you'd have to pay penance because you were away for a week, and there was people that he brought back and fired from vacations. But that's Vince. He gave me an opportunity. I learned a tremendous amount when I was there. I've not spoken to him since we left. We had some philosophical differences that it was, and I left of my own choosing. I chose to leave, and I left, and had no desire to ever go back.
What were some of those differences that you had?
Without getting into specifics, because part of my job was to be responsible for certain functions, and there was a perception in the public that was my responsibility. In other words, I was accountable for it, especially in the eyes of talent.
Okay.
And the truth of it is, I did not have the authority or the responsibility. If something happened, I called Vince, here's the situation, how do you want it handled? And then I was the messenger. And a lot of times throughout my career, when it came to payoffs, when it came to things, I realized that was my job. You know, I would do a preliminary payoff for a pay-per-view, and I would put down my opinion, and I would see a certain match have a certain importance then, and of course everything's finalized by Vince. You know, he'd come along and take something that I put for a particular match that I thought contributed to the success of that pay-per-view or what have you, and Vince would see it, cut it, and see it entirely different. Then maybe one of those individuals would come to Vince and say, Vince, I got my check. You know, don't you remember we did this and this and this leading up to it? And I thought that I was, you know, I meant more to that card. And Vince said, I will take a look at it. And then Vince would tell me, get the sheets, I want to take a look at it again. He would look at it. Invariably, he would like cut another check to the guy. And it was always, I don't know what JJ was thinking. You know, I should have taken a look at this. And you're right. You know, and here's this for you. And again, you know, that was my job. Vince never took heat for anything. Now, did the guys understand that? You know, as smart as they're supposed to be and streetwise in the business, so few of them ever understood that. You could tell them, and they wouldn't understand it. But there were certain things beyond that that I had concerns that I would, if something blew up, I would be the one set up to fail and be the scapegoat for it.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.